Highlight after highlight from J.J. McCarthy at camp. Should Sam Darnold be worried yet? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. I appreciate you all so very, very much. You guys make this thing go around. If you are new here and you're just trying to get some camp updates, you have come to the right place because we have an unofficial camp correspondent. Tyler Forness is going to be joining the show later. He was at camp. He watched everything. He sent me a whole bunch of clips, and we talked about the quarterback situation and a whole bunch of things. And if you like stuff like this, if you like this show, you can find it wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Just search out Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So today we're talking to Tyler. If you don't know Tyler Forness, he wrote for USA Today for a while. He's been all over the Score North world as a sort of guest that comes on and talks. He and I talk ball all the time. Tyler's a great friend. He and I sat next to each other at camp last year for a whole bunch of the days and watched Jordan Addison blow up and all that stuff. So lots of great fun. He was in the bleachers again this year. I'm not there this year, so he's bringing me the information. I figured I'd just bring it right to you. Cut out the middleman. So without further ado, here's Tyler. Tyler, hello.
Hello, Luke. Good to be here.
Tyler, you spent some time out in the sun watching Vikings training camp. So first off, thank you so much for giving me your time and hopefully giving me your time a few times in these next couple of weeks as you're going to be out there a lot and you can kind of keep us informed since I'm not in the state.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. It's training camp is fun, but I'll tell you, it's way better when the pads are on. Today was a little bit of a drag.
Yeah, the shells. But that said, we still saw quite a bit of hashtag slinging it. So the first thing that you and I we're going to talk about here is Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy, the battle. I'm starting to hear whispers. I'm starting to see people are smelling blood in the water about should Sam Darnold be on notice for his QB1 job. And the coaches are even talking about this as like a true camp competition. What are you seeing?
I'm not reading too much into that yet. I think you're seeing a lot of the really cool stuff J.J. McCarthy can do. He absolutely lasered ball to Jalen Naylor on a dig route in the back of the end zone in 7-on-7s. But when they ran 7-on-7s, it was 1s versus 1s and 2s versus 2s. And I think that matters when it comes to the level of competition. Darnold struggled a little bit. Well, he was also going against the top of Brian Flores' defense. And I think that matters when we're having this conversation. Plus, McCarthy is still a little erratic throwing to the sidelines. He missed a couple of balls with some poor mechanics trying to drive it both to the left and to the right. And those little things are going to keep him from really making this a true competition. It's okay to be excited. McCarthy's showing some really cool stuff. I think it's still firmly Darnold's job.
Yeah, it seems to me, based on the sample of it that I could find on social media and what the little I could find of what you've shown me, or I've gotten through what you've shown me so far, is that there's a lot of cool stuff and you can see the seeds of what it's going to be. You know, we've started chipping away and you can see what the sculpture will look like at the end, but it is not finished being carved out yet. And that means that the job will remain Darnold's, even though we're seeing, Theo Jackson gets a lot of play. It seems like Cam Bynum's going off on the ones right now. In what should be a moment of contract negotiation for him. So I got to think that's huge. But as much as like these lasers to the back of the end zone are really cool, it sounds like it's not like consistent. Is that what you've been seeing?
Yeah, it feels like, especially in the 7-on-7 drills, McCarthy flipped his hips to one side and only focused on like one half of the field. And he's not really making those full progressions with consistency. Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like slow. And that's fine. Like, you're a rookie. It's going to be slow. But it does seem like the way he like goes through his progressions, even watching, I mean, Kirk could get through them with reasonable rhythm. But even watching Hall or Mullins or Dobbs, well, not really Dobbs last year because he wasn't really progressing per se.
Yeah.
But there's just a different thing going on there. But like even with somebody like Jaren Hall and his was going through it a little bit faster. That's a short-term concern, but in that short term, it's a deal breaker.
It's absolutely a deal breaker. And one of the things I wanted to do today is kind of establish a baseline for what McCarthy and Darnold are doing. And then throughout my next 4 training camp practices, how is their evolution? Are they building on yesterday, today? And by the time we get to the 8th, when I'll be at my last training camp practice, unless I potentially get a credential, then it'll be a lot easier to kind of see what's happening. How are you growing? How are you improving? And how are you fixing what was bad? And I think those things matter way more than, oh, McCarthy threw a really cool pass to Naylor in the back of the end zone. That rocks. Get excited. Get hyped. But that's not going to make an impact today for week 1 or week 2 or even week 7.
Right. Because they have bigger things in mind, I guess, is maybe a way to put it excitingly. It's not to the standard that they want yet, but it's cool to see. Like, I think that it shows you how his brain is. He has like that killer instinct a little bit. I think you saw that especially in the rivalry games in college, like Michigan State and Ohio State and stuff. Like you saw, like there's the killer instinct that finds that in the back of the end zone. And I love that. And I love that he has the confidence to take it there. And it's just a matter of getting that to be consistent. And right now, what you have can make for some offense, as we are seeing in these 7-on drills. Although 7-on is just 7-on. I don't really respect 7-on. You know me.
I don't either.
Yeah, it's not football. It's a drill. But like it works on occasion when you take 6 reps in a row on the 5-yard line, you're going to score some touchdowns and be exciting. But in terms of running the entire offense, consistency is going to be the key. And so it's a matter of just taking this and continuing to build on it until you have something that is so much more than Darnold is ever going to be. That's where we're at, right? We're aiming a little higher than this, even though I'm sure you could put him in and maybe argue that, well, Darnold's thrown these interceptions and blah, blah, blah. And you can have this argument, but you have to look past the fact that he's been throwing at ones more often. And McCarthy's been throwing at twos more often, picking on Andrew Booth, who's having a catastrophe of a camp. Like that's, I guess, where I'm at is that consistency. But the other thing too, is like mechanically, we've been going in a lot of detail on Locked On Vikings here in terms of what we're looking for mechanically, and especially with like over rotation, where ideally when you're done with your pass, your hips and your shoulders are realigned and they're square to your target, and his are still rotating too far past it, which is, I think, what has caused some of those inaccuracies that you've mentioned. I've seen that in some clips too, so I think I'm on pretty safe ground saying that, but it's getting better. It's in Michigan, he would rotate a full, 120 degrees past where it was supposed to be. Now we're to like a 70-degree rotation. It's still too much, but it's less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those things come with time. I still remember being ingrained in my brain because everybody knows, big Florida Gator fan, love Tim Tebow. Still think he got a raw deal, but that's a whole nother story. One of the things they talked about with his pre-draft process, Tyler. Though, hold on, there is a point here. There's a point. One of the things with his pre-draft process,
he's a Met.
I know. They talked about messing with his mechanics and shortening that throwing motion. And one of the things during that process that they mentioned, it takes about 10,000 reps to make something muscle memory. So McCarthy being down to about 70 degrees instead of that 120 mentioned is fantastic. 10,000 reps to completely fix something, like we're about halfway there.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
We've got a ways to go. And a lot of those reps came outside of the Vikings facility with personal trainers and private companies and stuff. Some of which are where I've gotten a lot of my information. So that that's why I feel like I'm on safe ground, because I'm talking to people that like know what they've been telling him. But okay, let's take a minute though and talk about Darnold himself outside of the context of comparing him to McCarthy. Assuming Darnold does remain QB1, it feels like there's been a lot of ups and downs, right? You see these post bombs to Jordan Addison, who feels like he's having a completely nuclear camp, by the way. And then, and then he'll throw an interception, and then he'll throw a bomb to Naylor, who's also having a great, so what should I make of Darnold on the whole? I feel like I've seen a couple of cherry-picked examples. That's not giving me a big picture.
One of the big things that I kind of noticed with Darnold is he feels more comfortable running the offense than I expected him to be. He's making solid decisions. He's not putting the ball massively in harm's way. Now, things are still happening. He's not flawless, but he's also still learning this team. He's learning this organization and learning this offense. So we have to hold him to a different standard than what we held Kirk Cousins to, because Cousins had been here for so long. He had been entrenched with the organization, entrenched with the offense, especially last year. Well, Darnold's brand new, and he deserves a little bit of grace with these learning curves and trying to figure some of those things out. I think he's objectively fine. He's not making.
I think the San Francisco experience helps. Like it's a lot of the same. Like it's maybe a lot of the exact same stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe different code words, but that's about it.
I didn't see one like Nick Mullins Bozo Gene moment where it's just like, why are you throwing that? Like he's making.
Yeah, that's not the interceptions he throws. He throws like you shouldn't have tried. Like he throws like heat check interceptions, and then like I didn't see the safety interceptions. Not Nick Mullins. I'm in the grasp of a sack. Let me throw it to the nose tackle interceptions.
Yeah.
But before we get mad at the Cincinnati game last year again, let's go to what really lost that game, which is the secondary. And because we've got a lot of shuffling going on the secondary, obviously with losses and stuff. So that will be next on Locked On Vikings. Back with Tyler in just a second, but first, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to find last-minute tickets on whatever you're trying to get to, whether it is, say, a Twins game. If you are just looking to get out on a nice day, bring the kids out, maybe crack a cold one and watch some baseball, but you don't have any tickets because you didn't plan it 6 months ahead of time like sometimes you have to. No. That's what Game Time is for. And you can actually save up to 60% on buying last-minute tickets just by navigating this sort of volatility of the last-minute ticket market. Plus, you get the lowest price guaranteed from Game Time. If you find the same section and row for cheaper somewhere else, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out. We got Tyler Forness on here. He is on Purple Daily now, right? That's yeah. I didn't want to say that wrong. On Purple Daily, writing at.
We will announce my new destination.
Yeah, we don't know yet. I didn't want to blow up your spot. We don't know yet. Okay. So yeah, we're doing all kinds of great stuff. If you want more Minnesota sports talk, though, go check out the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube page. All things Minnesota sports all the time, even a 24/7 live stream over there for all of the Locked On shows relevant to Minnesota. So defense. Obviously, there's like Brian Flores is doing his psycho stuff, which is also, I think, a big impact on the quarterback battle because you're seeing who's getting the ball out fast. That becomes so important when you're practicing against this kind of defense all day long. But really, it's the back end where the interesting stuff is happening. Some people have thought, hey, what about moving Cam Bynum to cornerback? Which, for me, I haven't really addressed this yet on here, so I'm going to do that real quick. But for me, that when you have a player who's playing well, don't change it. And what are you doing? Like that, it's working. Do something else, right? Don't take something that is working and go try to paper over something that isn't working. And you might just make it so that both things aren't working. Like you're creating a new problem to maybe solve the current problem. And you might not even do that. And it is not like a profitable exchange. But that's not what's happening. That's not what the Vikings are doing. It's just like a take I've seen around. They have moved Jay Ward to corner. So how's that going?
Yeah. Well, I'll say this on the Cam Bynum thing. Just go look up why he's not playing corner. That'll explain everything. So Ward's an interesting case. He played all over the LSU defense in 2022 in his final season.
Right.
He also played 108 snaps at outside corner. 103 of them came in the final 3 games where he was almost exclusively only allowed 5 catches on 9 targets for 59 yards and 1 touchdown, including a game against the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC title game, where he only allowed 2 catches for 13 yards and that lone touchdown in a 50-30 loss. So they were able to move the ball pretty easily, and it wasn't because of Ward that they ended up losing that game defensively. He's got an interesting, like, kind of fluidity about him. He's able to kind of flip his hips, turn up field, and run with receivers. Didn't really get to see a whole lot of that today during training camp because a lot of the stuff he was doing while I saw him at corner was zone stuff. But sure, I did like that he's got that kind of fluidity. He's got over 32-inch arms. He's 6'1". I talked about it on Monday's Purple Daily on Draft that give him a shot. At the end of the day, you have to have bodies out there. It gets Ward on the field more, and it's going to give him an opportunity to show more of what he can do. And you know what? Maybe outside corner ends up being a really good fit for him. Maybe it's not, but at least you'll have the answer either way.
Yeah, I wonder. So here's the thing that I'm always curious with. It's a question about aggression, especially in off coverage. Is it a lot? It's a lot of off, I would imagine, if they're zoning off. And when they're in like a single high look, when it's 3 but it sounds like it's not 1. So when it's some kind of 3 match or 3, when you flip those hips, tells me a lot about your brain. It tells me how scared you are, right? Like how much you're anticipating a go route. And if you flip those things early, then it's like, okay, you might not have the juice right now. So I'd kind of rather you be a little late than a little early on those in practice. In actual games, the wisdom is you'd rather be early than late. Because if you're late, you give up a touchdown. If you're early, you give up a first down, right? But I want to see like the mentality. So that's something I am a little bit curious about. But we do have some pretty crazy performances from some of these guys on the secondary. Very extreme on one side or the other. I mean, Andrew Booth, it feels like he's getting lit up every other play. Cam Bynum is getting an interception every day. Theo Jackson's getting his hands on a lot. Theo Jackson kind of coming into his own as another safety is huge. A lot of the success in that safety room, of course, Metellus too, it helps, soothe the burn of missing so hard on someone like Lewis Cine, where it's like, okay, at least it's not still a need. But am I only seeing the highlights? Are there enough lowlights worth mentioning on those guys because of what Darnold and McCarthy are, deep bombs to Addison and all that stuff? Like, where are you at on this secondary right now? Are they getting ripped up the way that it maybe seems like they are, and it's just a couple of players doing well?
Honestly, no. A lot of the stuff, especially in 7-on-7, it's taken 4 to 7 seconds for these quarterbacks to really let the ball rip. If it's past like 3 to 5 yards. So I think the defense has been objectively fine, at least the one day I was there. I think tomorrow might tell a different story with pads on. But Flores is doing some fun things. And there was one play where it was a run, and Blake Cashman just kind of threw his shoulder and popped the running back. Just nice. Just absolute dumb job.
A little love tap.
Just a little bit. But I haven't seen Andrew Booth be an adjunct disaster. And I know it feels that way.
So I'm seeing the biggest plays. So that could just be my perception, and you've seen the whole thing.
And I also think with Booth, we have this preconceived notion that he's bad. And I'm not trying to say anything else, but I didn't notice him at all today. And good thing. I think the only play I noticed him was where he chased I think it was Robert Tonyan on the other side of the field, and it ended up getting a tackle. Like there's effort there. But if you don't get noticed at corner, for me, that's a good thing. I think we'll find out more throughout the next few days, but I think it's one of those things where, look, Jefferson torches you. Okay.
Yeah. Reps on JJ don't count.
On that field.
Reps on Jefferson do not count.
Yeah.
I see, like, to your point, with camp, sacks still get thrown. Like, if it's a sack, the ball still gets thrown. So that's like one of the disadvantages that a DB will have is that you every single, unlike in a game, every single rep, the ball will be thrown to somebody. There was no such thing as a throwaway. There's no such thing, the quarterback won't like get out and scramble. Usually they're not supposed to do that in camp. So that like you have like you have to stick with people for longer. You have to stick with somebody for 7 seconds, even though a sack happened 3 seconds ago. So Tyler, thank you so much for your time. We will talk again very soon. And so keep some thoughts in mind and lay them on me. Thank you so much for hanging out and give me your camp thoughts.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. I'm excited to kind of see how this thing continues to grow over the next few days.
Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. There's something for everyone all day, every day, all summer long. So whether it's the Olympics, whether it is baseball home run props, or whether it's something like an NFL futures bet, Vikings over under 7.5, whatever you want, you can find it at FanDuel. And go check out the website often. Go check it out every day because there's a different booster bonus every day. So if you go to the website, you see that boost, you're like, I don't know if I'm into that. It's a baseball thing and I don't really like rambling on baseball. Come back later. Maybe you'll have something on a totally new part of sports that you're a little more interested in. Check back often because there are definitely deals to be had at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again to Tyler. Definitely want to talk to Tyler more as camp goes on. He and I are going to kind of watch this develop together in a lot of the way that we've been watching and this development on this show in general. So very excited for that. But now I want to switch gears and do an entry into the Everyman series. We still have a few players left to get to. The list is growing as more people join. The Vikings signed Fabian Moreau after I recorded this whole interview and talked about all this, so we'll get into that later. But there's another corner and somebody with some actual starting experience. There's like a veteran corner coming in to help that slot. There's your kind of Band-Aid corner. We'll get to that, but for now, I want to go into the Everyman series. If you are new here, the Everyman series is where we go over the backstories, the journey, the road to the NFL for each Vikings player on the 90-man roster, each new Vikings player on the 90-man roster. If you want to hear the one for somebody who's been here for a while, like Justin Jefferson or whatever, you can go to previous years. It's all still up. We've been doing this series since I took over the show in late 2018. So you can go find anybody who's been on the team. Today's entry into the Everyman series will be Jalen Redmond. And Jalen Redmond's story is all kind of weird and delayed. Everything about his story doesn't time out the way that a typical NFL coming of age story does, where you pick up a football and you're in love with it for your whole childhood, and you work really hard in high school, and then you get recruiting offers and you get to go to a college. It didn't work out that way. In fact, Jalen Redmond, it's kind of a Sammis Reyes type story, if you remember that one from a few weeks ago, where he was a basketball player. And he had the dream of playing basketball. He played both football and basketball as a kid, but once he got to high school, he was like, I want to focus on one. Basketball is the dream. That's the goal. I'm going to play basketball. And it wasn't until spring of his sophomore year when, football coaches that looked on him, and he was just built, right? Like, he doesn't look like a basketball player. He looks like a football player. And the football coaches kind of, they approached him and they said, just try it. Just give me one spring program, try it out. You're not playing basketball right now anyways. See what you like, see if it works. And boy, did it work. This was a prestigious enough high school where your spring practices would have somebody from the Memphis Tigers in attendance watching and looking for recruits. And he puts on the pads and right off the bat, the first time Memphis sees him, they offer him a scholarship. And okay, well, this is easier than the basketball dream, so we're going to go for this now. He was that good right off the bat. Of course, it wasn't just Memphis. His whole recruiting thing exploded right away. The second he stepped on the field, it was just that natural and easy that colleges wanted a piece of him. He got offers from all the big names. He'll end up at Oklahoma. But when he gets to Oklahoma, it gets scary fast, and things take a very dark turn. Doctors will find blood clots in his lungs, and it totally derails his freshman year. He was actually a fairly hyped up prospect for somebody that, now the recruiting cycle has been whispering about for, 2-3 years here. And he gets to Oklahoma, but now this is all going to be delayed because he has blood clots. If any of those blood clots were to become a blockage, it could drop him dead on the spot. So that's a really scary thing. You got to deal with that. And it freaks him out. Of course it does, right? Like you're 18 and you're suddenly like dealing with mortality, right? And this thing will bug him that whole year. He'll try to come back, but then he's got to go like do more treatment for it. And he'll end up missing a little bit of time. His whole freshman year is kind of like messed up for it. But he'll get playing times the next year in 2019. He'll do very well here in that year, actually. And it looks like he's starting to kind of hit the ground running the way that Oklahoma expected him to, as the guy that, that they thought they were getting when they recruited him. But the next year, when he's supposed to take that next leap and really become the superstar, and by the way, if he played well enough, he'd be draft eligible by then, and we could be having a totally different conversation. But that was 2020. Things got unprecedented. And COVID affects all of these stories a little differently. It's really fascinating now that we're a few years removed from the height of like lockdown and all that stuff. And how that season, for some people, it was, it kind of helped where the guy in front of him opted out, and now you got, playing time that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Or it meant, oh, my school didn't do a football season this year. Well, now I can finally hit the weight room and like bulk up the way I want to. Some people really made the most out of it. For Jalen Redmond, this could not have come at a worse time, and it couldn't be a worse thing for him. Because of his condition with blood clots, he's really freaked out by all of this. And you got to understand and like remember back to the way that what we understood about COVID back in 2020, when he's making all these decisions. We didn't really know anything about it. It behaved differently than the way that it behaves today in terms of how contagious it is and how severe it is and the symptoms that people usually get. Like it's mutated into a different world over a few years. Back then, it was all a big, scary mystery that we didn't know anything about. And the news cycle was going crazy and the fear-mongering was crazy. But one of the things we understand about it, that we were starting to understand then, is that it has an effect on like your blood oxygen, especially in like severe cases. And so anything that like messes with your blood flow as a guy with blood clots, not messing with it at all. Nope, can't do it. So he will opt out of that season because of the blood clots. And I think that's a perfectly sensible thing to do. But it kills him. Oh my God, does he beat himself up over this? It's one thing to miss time because you're getting treatment on a physical condition, right? And that requires a patience that a lot of people in this series have learned about. If you watch Netflix's Receiver, Justin Jefferson talks about learning that patience lesson when he was dealing with his hamstring last year. It's difficult when you're dealing with a physical thing and you kind of just have to wait and you have to be like really passive about it in a way that you're like not used to being. But this is another beast entirely because this was a choice. This was, I can totally play right now. I could line up and I could play and I can work out and I'm healthy. But because of the decision he made for his own health, which again, I think is more than defensible, but that's the only thing keeping him off the field. And it's really difficult to deal with. He'll take his angst out on the weight room a little bit and he'll bulk up. He'll gain like 20 pounds of bulk over that season, which, they're like flirting with D-tackle when he does come back in 2021, but he misses it more than all of that. He's just like missing, he'll watch his team lose a game and go, what if I were out there? Right. He misses his friends. Like late in the season, he'll actually go to the facility and like help them in the locker room a little bit, even though that's essentially risking the thing that he's been trying to not risk. And this is like fall of 2020 when everybody's still very much in lockdown. So it feels like he's taking this big risk to go in just to be around it because he just has to. It's like it's weighing on him that much where he's taking what is, to his understanding at the time, and maybe he's a little right about this. I'm not going to start going into the molecular biology of COVID, but a life-threatening risk just to be a little bit around football because he misses it that bad, because it's hurting him that bad. But anyways, 2021 comes around, things loosen in the college world, vaccines roll out and all that. There's solutions abound. And all the SEC programs have figured out how to make it feel like, okay, we can do this, right? Whatever precautions we have to take. So 2021, he's back. And they flirt with a move to defensive tackle. He'll end up playing defensive end, but things proceed pretty normal from there through 21 and 22. He's a junior, he's a senior, he's a leader, he's playing well enough to get a little bit of NFL attention. But this whole blood clots into COVID opt-out, into like waiting and redshirt years and all that, has absolutely annihilated his draft stock. There's no shot that he's going to get drafted. He gets a camp invite for the Carolina Panthers. He will not make the Carolina Panthers, and that's it. Doesn't get any other calls from anybody else. That should be the end of things. For hundreds of players every single year, that is the end of things. You're an undrafted guy. You show up, you get cut. You don't get the invite back to the practice squad. You just didn't make it. Good luck, get a job. And that's this crossroads, right? Where you now have to decide when you're in that world and you realize nobody's calling, right? Week 2 is on, nobody's calling. You can stay in shape, you can stay by the phone, you can try to, hold out hope that you're going to get a call because somebody got a bunch of injuries, by Thanksgiving. That has happened to some people. Some people that are on the Vikings roster have had their careers revived that way. So very much a possibility, worth staying in shape. But you also got to pay the bills, so people are going to go start working at Kroger's. Or you reach out to the spring leagues. And you sign up for the UFL. It's going to have its inaugural season as the merging of the USFL and the XFL, and you go play season for the Arlington Renegades. That's another way to revive your career. It brings him back here into an opportunity that without the spring leagues, Jalen Redmond would not have. I believe that pretty strongly. He would have an interesting Wikipedia page, a shadow box maybe of his Carolina Panthers practice jersey up on his wall. He got his degree at Oklahoma, but it's like time to go start whatever your next career is, next chapter of life, and we move on and we grow up and we mature. But now the goal is practice squad, I think, as an undrafted, UFL guy. You're just trying to stay in the building, right? If you make the team, oh my goodness, fantastic job. Nothing stopping you from doing that but yourself. But practice squad would be a win here. But if not, then we go back to that same crossroads. Do we go back to the Renegades, or is it job time? That's the story of so many of these bottom roster guys, and it always makes for a compelling case to watch them fight for their dream. This is what he wanted to do since high school. This might be the last chance to do it. We'll keep covering camp. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.